Chapter 1. By 32, I thought I had finally built a life my family could not touch. I was a senior software engineer in Charlotte with a steady paycheck, my own place, and a $25,000 emergency fund that meant I would never have to beg my mother for anything again. Then my sister's secret debt exploded. My mother demanded every cent, and when I said no, she forged my name, lied to my bank that I was incapacitated, and emptied my account to save my sister's wedding. I stayed quiet for one day because I needed proof, and 3 mornings later the police were at her front door. My sister's fiancé was gone, and my whole family was calling me the villain. By the time I turned 32, I had built a life that looked solid from the outside. I lived alone in a 1-bedroom condo in Charlotte, a few blocks from uptown. I worked as a senior software engineer for Astra Health Systems. I had good health insurance, a steady paycheck, a retirement account that was finally starting to look respectable, and a savings balance that let me sleep at night. What most people saw was a woman who had it together. What they did not see was that almost every stable thing in my adult life had been built around one old fear. I was terrified of ever needing help and having none. Terrified of standing in the kitchen with bills on the counter and nothing in the fridge and no one coming to fix it. Terrified of feeling the way I felt as a kid, when you learned very early that if you wanted something essential, you had better find a way to earn it yourself. My mother, Denise, always said money was tight when it came to me. Funny how it never seemed tight when it came to my younger sister, Betrayal. I still remember opening the refrigerator one night when I was maybe 14 and finding half a carton of milk, a bottle of mustard, and a bruised apple. That same evening Betrayal breezed through the front door carrying 3 glossy shopping bags from the mall, smiling like she had just stepped out of a movie. My mother barely looked up from the table when I asked what we were having for dinner. She just said, "We will make do tonight, Natalie. Stop being dramatic." We always made do when it was me. When I turned 16, I started working evenings at a diner called Maple Street Grill. I told people it was for spending money, because that sounded less humiliating than admitting I needed the job for winter boots, school supplies, and gas money for the rusted Honda Civic my uncle sold me cheap. I learned how to smile at people who snapped their fingers for coffee refills. I learned how to count tips in the parking lot before driving home. I learned how to hide cash in a tin under my bed because even then, some part of me already knew that money in my hand felt safer than promises from family. Betrayal never had to learn any of that. She had the right hair, the right smile, the right kind of need. The kind my mother recognized as worthy. Dance camp, new clothes, salon appointments, money for spring break, a better phone, a car with working air conditioning. There was always a reason. There was always some explanation for why Betrayal needed it more. The part that stayed with me was not even the unfairness. It was the story attached to it. I was the capable one. The independent one. The strong one. My mother said it like praise, and for years I mistook it for love. What it really meant was this. You can survive without help, so I do not have to be fair to you. That is why I became obsessive about saving. The $25,000 sitting in my emergency fund was not some random number. It was not vacation money or impulse money. It was rent money if I lost my job. It was medical deductible money if something bad happened. It was the difference between panic and options. It was my proof that no matter what my family did, would never have to crawl back into that house and ask my mother for anything again. Betrayal, on the other hand, had built her whole adult life on the assumption that someone would always catch her before she hit the ground. At 28, she worked as a marketing coordinator for a luxury med spa in South End and curated her life like a storefront window. Designer bags she could not afford. Weekend trips that somehow always made it online. Bridal planning content that made her look like she was gliding effortlessly toward a beautiful life. If you only knew Betrayal through her photos, you would think she had taste, discipline, and a future. If you knew her in real life, you knew she had a talent for spending money she did not have and acting offended when the bill came due. She was engaged to Owen Parker, who was just about the opposite of her in every way. Owen worked as a project estimator for a commercial construction company. He was practical, calm, and so painfully decent it almost made me feel sorry for him. He was the kind of man who actually read contracts, showed up early, and thought if two adults sat down and made a plan, most problems could be solved. Brielle had never solved a problem in her life. She had only ever delayed consequences until they became someone else's emergency. Apparently Owen had discovered she was hiding a pile of credit card debt, just over $25,000, spread across multiple cards with brutal interest rates. It was not one bad month or a medical crisis. It was years of pretending she lived in a tax bracket she had never even visited. Bridal deposits, cosmetic treatments, boutique shopping, a girl's trip to Miami, furniture for the townhouse she shared with Owen, and a revolving stack of purchases designed to maintain the illusion that Brielle Cross had everything under control. Owen finally gave her an ultimatum. Either she told the truth and came up with a real plan, or the wedding stopped until he could trust her again. Brielle did what Brielle always did when real life cornered her. She ran to my mother. The call came on a Tuesday night just after 7. I had just gotten home from work, changed into leggings and a sweatshirt, and was standing at the stove making pasta when my phone started buzzing on the counter. Denise. I stared at it for 2 rings before I answered. I already knew, somehow, that whatever came next would not be a conversation. Natalie, my mother said, not even bothering with hello, we have a family emergency. I turned down the burner and leaned against the counter. Her voice had that tone I knew too well. Controlled, tight, and already annoyed at the possibility of resistance. What happened? I asked. Brielle made a mistake, she said. Owen found out about some credit cards, and now he is threatening to call off the wedding if the debt is not handled immediately. She is beside herself. This is not the time for judgment. I need you to transfer $25,000 to Brielle by tomorrow morning so we can get this cleaned up before it gets any worse. For a second I honestly thought I had misheard her. You need me to what? Do not start with that tone, Natalie. This is serious. I laughed once, but there was no humor in it. You are asking me to empty my entire emergency fund because Brielle maxed out a bunch of cards pretending to be rich online. My mother's voice went cold. I am not asking. I am telling you what needs to happen. Brielle is your sister. Families help each other. You are single, you make excellent money, and that cash is just sitting there. She is the one whose future is on the line. I gripped the edge of the counter so hard my fingertips hurt. That money is not sitting there doing nothing, I said. It is my emergency fund. I earned it. If Brielle is in this situation, then Brielle needs to deal with it. Denise exhaled sharply, the way she always did when she thought I was being deliberately difficult. All she did was make a small mistake. You always do this. You act like money is sacred when it should be used to take care of family. No, I said. Family is not entitled to my bank account. There was a beat of silence, then she came back harder. You have always been jealous of your sister. That is what this is really about. You cannot stand that she is getting married and moving forward, so you are willing to watch her life fall apart over money you will make back in a year. I closed my eyes. For one brief second, I was 16 again, standing in that kitchen, being told to understand, to sacrifice, to be the bigger person because that was apparently my assigned role forever. Then I opened my eyes and heard my own voice come out steadier than I felt. No. I am not giving Brielle $25,000. Not $1. If she needs that much money just to keep her fiancé from walking away, then money is not the real problem. My mother exploded. She called me selfish. Bitter. Cold. She said I had no heart. She said any decent daughter would do this without hesitation. She told me I was disgusting for hoarding money while my sister's life was imploding. I waited until she took a breath. Then I said, I am done being the person you drain every time Brielle breaks something. I am not paying for this. Her voice dropped into something sharper, uglier. If you do this, Natalie, do not expect me to forget it. I looked at the pot on the stove, the steam rising, the little ordinary kitchen I had paid for with my own money, and something inside me finally locked into place. I guess that makes 2 of us, I said, and I ended the call. The apartment went quiet except for the soft bubbling of pasta water. My hands were shaking, but under the adrenaline was a feeling I almost did not recognize. Relief. I had finally said no. Not softened it, not delayed it, not wrapped it in apologies. Just no. I turned off the stove, drained the pasta, and moved through the rest of the night in a strange fog. I kept waiting for the guilt to crush me, but it never fully landed. It hovered at the edges, thinner than it used to be. In its place was a small, private sense of pride. For the first time in years, I felt like I had chosen myself before anyone could talk me out of it. When I went to bed that night, I still had a knot in my stomach. But I also had the quiet, almost dangerous feeling that maybe something had changed. Maybe I was finally done being useful to them. Chapter 2. The next morning began so normally that for a few seconds I actually believed the worst of it was behind me. I woke up a little before 7, pulled my hair into a loose knot, and padded barefoot into the kitchen. The city outside my windows was still soft and gray, not fully awake yet. I set my coffee maker, opened my laptop on the island out of habit, and reached for my phone to check whether my direct deposit had landed. It was one of those tiny rituals that made adulthood feel stable. Rent paid, bills covered, money where it was supposed to be. My checking account looked fine. My savings account did not. I stared at the number on the screen, waiting for my brain to correct it. $0.00. I blinked and refreshed the app. 0. I refreshed again. Still 0. For one long, terrible second, everything inside me went quiet. Then my pulse slammed so hard against my ribs it made me lightheaded. The coffee mug slipped from my hand and shattered across the tile. Hot coffee spread under the cabinet, but I did not move. I could not move. My whole body felt cold, like somebody had opened a freezer door inside my chest. I tapped into the transaction history with fingers that did not feel connected to me. There it was. A wire transfer for $25,000, processed in person the previous afternoon at a branch in Matthews. A few hours before my mother had called me. My first thought was fraud. A data breach. Some nightmare involving stolen personal information. My second thought was worse. I called customer service so fast I nearly mistyped my own password. The automated menu felt endless, and by the time a real person came on the line I was gripping the edge of my counter hard enough to make my hand ache. I gave her my name, the last 4 digits of my social, and the account number. There was a pause, keys clicking on the other end. Then the woman said, "I do see the outgoing wire transfer, Miss Vale. It was processed in person yesterday at our Matthews branch." I swallowed and heard how thin my voice sounded. I did not authorize anything yesterday. I was at work. Where did the money go? More typing. The representative went quiet for just a beat too long. Then she said, "It was transferred into an external checking account under the name Betrayal Cross." I felt the room tilt. "And who approved it?" I asked. Another pause. The account notes show the transaction was initiated through a legacy customer linkage. The approval is listed under Denise Vale. I stopped breathing. The woman kept talking, maybe because she thought silence meant she should explain. Maybe because she had no idea she had just split my life open. "It appears your mother was connected as a joint holder on an earlier youth account profile," she said carefully. "I would strongly recommend you come into the branch immediately and speak with a manager." I hung up without saying goodbye. For maybe 30 seconds I just stood there in the middle of my kitchen, staring at nothing, the smell of burnt coffee hanging in the air. My mother had not called me to ask for help. She had called me after she had already taken the money. She had wanted to see whether I would fold, whether I would let her dress up theft as family obligation and save her the trouble of being challenged. The worst part was not even the money being gone. It was the arrogance of it. She really thought she could do this to me and still expect me to cooperate. I threw on jeans, the first sweater I grabbed, and my sneakers without socks. The drive from Charlotte to Matthews usually took 20 minutes if traffic behaved. That morning I barely remember it. I remember red brake lights. I remember gripping the wheel too hard. I remember thinking, over and over, she did this before she called. She did this before she called. Frontier Community Credit Union sat in a low brick building near a shopping center I had driven past 100 times without really seeing it. Inside, it smelled faintly of paper, carpet cleaner, and old coffee. I walked straight to the counter and said I needed the branch manager right now. A few minutes later I was sitting across from a man in his 40s with rolled-up sleeves and a worried expression. His nameplate said Evan Mercer. He pulled up my profile while I handed him my driver's license with a hand that was still not fully steady. I told him, someone stole $25,000 from my savings account yesterday, and your system says it was my mother. I want to know exactly how that happened. His mouth tightened the moment he saw my account history. He clicked through several screens, then let out a slow breath through his nose. Ms. Vale, he said, I am very sorry, but I think I see the issue. Issue is a very mild word for felony theft, I said. He looked up, clearly deciding not to argue with that. When you opened your first account here as a minor, your mother was required to be listed on the youth savings profile, he said. Later, when you turned 18, you opened your adult accounts under a separate product structure. The problem is that our older core system never fully severed the customer linkage from the original profile. I stared at him. Are you telling me my mother could still walk in here and touch my money because of paperwork from when I was 16? Not legally in the sense of ownership, he said quickly. But operationally, the old profile still linked her identity to your historical customer record. It created an override path that should have been flagged and reviewed more carefully than it was. More carefully, I repeated. So yes. She walked in here and took it. His face got tighter. It is worse than that. He printed something, stood, and crossed the room to hand it to me. It was the wire authorization form. At the top was the transfer amount. At the bottom was a shaky, ugly imitation of my signature. I stared at it long enough for my vision to blur. Mr. Mercer sat back down and lowered his voice. Your mother came in yesterday afternoon. She spoke with one of our senior tellers, Elaine Rourke. Ms. Rourke has been here over 20 years and recognized your mother from prior visits on the old family profile. Your mother presented her own identification and claimed you had been in an accident and were unable to appear in person. She said the family needed immediate access to funds for emergency medical expenses. I looked up slowly. She told your employee I was hurt. He nodded once, looking sick now. Ms. Rourke saw the legacy profile link, the identification, and the urgency of the story, and she overrode standard wire verification. The form was processed and the funds were released to the destination account. I put the paper down very carefully because if I had not, I might have torn it in half. That is my forged signature, I said. And the money was sent to my sister. Yes, he said quietly. So your teller let my mother lie about me being incapacitated, sign my name, and empty my emergency fund into Brielle's checking account. His silence answered for him before his mouth did. Ms. Vale, we are opening an internal review immediately. Compliance is going to have to examine the legacy linkage, the teller override, and the footage from the branch. Our legal department will also be notified. There it was. The first flicker of fear from the other side of the desk. Not for me. For the credit union. Good, I said. Because I am not treating this as a misunderstanding. He nodded. I understand that. Do you? I asked. Because my mother did not borrow money. She did not accidentally move funds. She forged my name, lied about my medical condition, and sent my savings to my sister. Those are not gray areas. His voice dropped even more. I agree. I folded the wire form and slid it into my bag. I wanted more. I wanted camera footage, written statements, names, timestamps, blood. But even in the middle of my rage, I knew I did not have enough yet. I had proof she had done it. I did not yet have proof she would admit she knew it was theft. And if the last 32 years had taught me anything, it was this. Denise Vale could talk her way around almost anything if you gave her room. I walked out of the credit union and sat in my car with the door closed and the engine off. The parking lot was bright with late morning sun, but I felt chilled all the way through. I took the wire form out again and looked at that fake signature until my disgust hardened into something much more useful. Not panic. Not grief. Strategy. If I called her screaming, she would deny everything. She would say I had agreed, or that the money was hers all along, or that Betrayal was family and family money should be shared. She would take what was already obscene and try to drag it back into the muddy territory she had always loved most, where truth could be argued into exhaustion. I pulled out my phone and opened my browser. North Carolina recording law. I read it twice to make sure my hands were not making me miss something obvious. One-party consent. As long as I was part of the conversation, I could legally record it without telling the other person. I sat there for a minute, the wire form on my lap, my thumb hovering over the screen. Then I downloaded a call recording app, opened it, and watched the red circle appear. After that, I went to my contacts and found my mother's name. I did not hit call. Not yet. Chapter 3. I sat there with my phone in my hand until the screen dimmed. Then I unlocked it again, opened the recording app, and hit the red button before I could talk myself out of it. My fingers felt strangely steady as I tapped my mother's name. She answered on the second ring. Well, she said, syrupy and bright. Look who finally came to her senses. I swallowed hard and forced my voice to come out smaller than I felt. Mom, I just checked my account. A soft sigh came through the line, the kind she used when she wanted to sound patient with someone she thought was being childish. Yes, Natalie. I know. My hand tightened around the phone. Where is it? Oh, for heaven's sake, do not start, she said. The money is safe. Betrayal has it. Everything is under control now. I stared through the windshield at the credit union parking lot, at a woman loading groceries into the back of an SUV, at a world that had somehow not stopped. How did you do that? I asked quietly. I was not even there. She gave a short laugh. That was the point. I let a beat pass, long enough for her to keep talking. Mom, I do not understand. They really let you do that? Of course they did, she said. I went in, I told them the situation, I showed my ID, and I handled it. Someone in this family had to. I said nothing. She filled the silence exactly the way I knew she would. I told them you were incapacitated and we needed to move funds immediately. It was not difficult, Natalie. Honestly, if that little credit union is that careless, you should be thanking me for showing you how exposed your money was. The words hit me one at a time. Incapacitated. Move funds. Not difficult. I made my voice shake. You told them I was hurt. I told them what I needed to tell them to get Betrayal out of a crisis. You signed something. Another little laugh. There was paperwork, yes. Do not be so dramatic. I took care of it. You signed my name. She did not even hesitate. I signed what needed to be signed. The funds went where they needed to go. Owen was ready to walk away, and now he has no reason to. My chest felt tight enough to crack. Mom, that is theft. The sweetness vanished from her voice so fast it was almost impressive. No, Natalie. It is family duty. Do not use ugly little words just because you are angry. I closed my eyes and let her keep digging. That was my emergency fund. And Betrayal had an emergency, she snapped. You are one woman with a high salary, a condo, and a savings account you were hoarding like a dragon. Your sister was on the verge of losing her wedding. You tell me which one mattered more in that moment. I pressed the heel of my hand against my forehead. You did not even ask me. I did ask you, she shot back. You refused. So I made the executive decision a mother sometimes has to make when one child is being selfish and the other one actually needs help. Every word was cleaner than any confession I could have scripted. You had no right. I have every right, she said. I raised you. I fed you. I put a roof over your head. If you think you get to sit there with all that money while your sister's life falls apart, then you are even colder than I thought. And let me make this very clear. If you embarrass this family over this, I will tell everyone exactly what kind of woman you are. I let one more silence open between us. Then I said, very softly, end quote, I understand, end quote. Good, she said. Then stop spiraling and act like an adult for once. I ended the call before she could say anything else. For a few seconds I just sat there, phone in one hand, wire form in the other, hearing her voice echo inside my skull. She had not sounded guilty. She had sounded annoyed that I needed the situation explained to me. I hit replay and listened to the recording straight through. By the end of it, my skin was crawling. Not because I was surprised anymore. Because there was something uniquely sick about hearing your own mother describe identity theft like she was talking about rearranging furniture. I was still sitting there when my phone buzzed with a text from Naomi Hart. You sound wrecked. Where are you? Naomi had been my closest friend since college, the kind of friend who did not ask if you wanted comfort first or a plan first. She assessed the damage and started moving. Matthews, I typed back. Frontier Credit Union parking lot. I have 30 minutes before my next meeting. Stay put. She pulled in 20 minutes later in a charcoal gray SUV, got out wearing navy scrubs under a camel coat, and crossed the lot with the expression of a woman already preparing to ruin someone's day in a very organized fashion. Naomi was an HR business partner for a hospital network in Charlotte, which meant she had two gifts I deeply respected. She could spot manipulation from a mile away, and she never wasted energy on performative outrage when logistics would do more damage. She slid into the passenger seat and looked at my face once. How bad? I handed her the wire form without speaking. She read it, jaw tightening, then held out her hand for my phone. Tell me you got her on tape. I nodded and passed it over. Naomi listened without interrupting. Halfway through, she actually sat back and muttered, "Oh my God." When the recording ended, she set the phone down between us very carefully. Nat, she said, that is not a family argument. I know. No. I need you to hear me say it. She tapped the wire form with one finger. This is identity theft. This is fraudulent transfer. This is financial abuse with paperwork. Something in my chest shifted hearing it said that cleanly. I looked down at my lap. She kept saying it was family duty. Naomi gave a hard, humorless laugh. Abusive people love a noble slogan. It makes them feel elegant while they steal from you. We drove to a quiet cafe a few miles away and took a corner booth near the back. Naomi pulled out her laptop before the waitress even brought water. Okay, she said. We do this like adults and not like traumatized daughters. What do we have? What can disappear? Who controls the story right now? And what are we still missing? For the next hour she turned my panic into a system. We uploaded the recording to a secure cloud folder and to an external drive she kept in her bag because she was apparently born prepared for federal litigation. We printed my account statements. We made copies of the wire form. Naomi built a timeline with exact times. My mother's call the previous night. The transfer processing time. My call to customer service. My branch visit. Then she looked up at me over her glasses. I am dealing with a serious legal issue involving identity theft. I need confirmation that I was in the office yesterday afternoon. Badge records, Teams activity, email timestamps, calendar logs, whatever is easiest. Dana did not ask invasive questions. That was one reason I respected her. I can get facilities to pull your badge entry, she said. And I can forward the project chain you answered around 3:30. You were definitely online. Do you need a written statement? Maybe, I said. Not yet. Just proof. You will have it in 10 minutes. Naomi pointed at me the second I hung up. That, she said, is how you build a case. By the time Dana's email came through, I had badge entry records, Teams timestamps, and an email chain with my responses stamped right across the same hour Denise had supposedly stood at a teller window signing my name. We put everything in a red folder. Then Naomi closed her laptop and said, "Now we go find out whether the police want to call this family drama or a crime." The Charlotte-Mecklenburg precinct downtown looked exactly the way all police buildings somehow look, too cold, too fluorescent, and permanently tired. We waited nearly 40 minutes before a detective in a white shirt and loosened tie called my name. Luis Navarro led us to a cramped office with 2 chairs and a desk covered in case files. He sat, opened a notepad, and gave me the look of a man trying not to get pulled into something messy before lunch. "So," he said, "start from the beginning." I did. He listened, but I could see the skepticism in his face when I got to the part about my mother and the old bank linkage. When I finished, he leaned back and rubbed one hand over his jaw. "Ms. Cross, I am not saying nothing criminal happened," he said. "But parent-child financial disputes get muddy fast. Old joint account profiles, verbal permission, family money arrangements. A lot of these cases turn into civil matters." Naomi shifted beside me, but I touched the folder first. I slid it across the desk. "There is no verbal permission," I said. "There is a forged authorization form, a recording of my mother admitting she lied to the bank and signed my name, and records showing I was at work while the transfer was processed." That got his attention. He opened the folder. He read the form. Then he took my phone and listened to the recording in silence. He did not perform surprise. He did not sit up dramatically like someone in a legal thriller. He just got very still. When the recording ended, he set the phone down, looked at the form again, and then looked at me with a completely different expression than the one he had started with. "Okay," he said. "That is substantially different." He asked for my badge records, the email chain, the branch manager's name, the teller's name, my mother's full legal name, my sister's banking information if I had it. His tone was calm, clipped, professional. The skepticism was gone. "This crosses out of family misunderstanding territory," he said. "You have a forged signature, a fraudulent representation to a financial institution, and a transfer of funds to a third-party beneficiary. If you are willing to sign a formal statement today, we can open this as a criminal matter." I looked at the pen he set in front of me. The room suddenly felt very quiet. Naomi did not touch me. She did not need to. I knew what signing meant. It meant there was no undoing this if guilt showed up tomorrow wearing my mother's voice. I took the pen. "I am willing," I said. My signature went onto the paper in one clean line. When Naomi and I stepped back outside, the late afternoon sun hit the courthouse steps so brightly I had to squint. The red folder felt heavier in my hand than it had when I walked in, but not in the same way. An hour earlier it had been proof that my family had hurt me. Now it was the first thing I had ever held that felt stronger than they were. Chapter 4. 3 mornings later, my phone started ringing before sunrise. I was half awake, reaching for it on instinct, when I saw Detective Navarro's name on the screen. My throat tightened immediately. I sat up in bed and answered. "This is Natalie." "Ms. Cross, this is Detective Navarro. I wanted to let you know we executed the warrant this morning." For a second I just stared into the dark bedroom. "You arrested her?" "Yes, ma'am. Your mother was taken into custody without incident." Without incident. The phrase was so clean it almost felt unreal. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and pressed my free hand to my forehead. "Okay," I said. "Thank you for telling me. There may be additional contact from your sister or other family members today. Do not engage if you do not want to. If anyone attempts to pressure you or interfere with the investigation, document it." "I will." He paused. "You did the right thing." Then he hung up. I sat there for another 10 seconds, not moving. I had spent my whole life bracing for my mother. Her moods, her anger, her ability to turn a room against me with 3 sentences and a sigh. And suddenly, for the first time I could remember, the fear was gone. Not softened. Gone. My phone buzzed again. Then again. Then again. By the time I unlocked it, Betrayal had left 4 voicemails and 6 texts in under 10 minutes. I played the first voicemail. Natalie, what the hell is wrong with you? Mom got taken out of the house in handcuffs. The neighbors saw everything. Call me back right now. The second one was louder, less coherent. You lied to the police. You made this sound insane. They froze my account this morning. I cannot even use my debit card. Do you understand what you've done? The third one cracked halfway through into crying. Owen thinks you're telling the truth. He's acting like I committed some actual crime. This was supposed to help us. Mom was trying to fix it. Call me back. By the 4th voicemail, she was furious again. If you do not fix this, I swear to God I will never forgive you. I deleted all 4 and set the phone down. At 6:48, Owen texted. Need to talk today. Lunch. Please. I stared at his name for a long moment before I typed back. Noon. Freedom Park. He was already there when I arrived, sitting on a bench near the water with both elbows on his knees, staring at nothing. He looked like he had not slept. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his jaw had that tight-locked look people get when they are trying very hard not to come apart in public. When he stood up, he did not even try to pretend normal. Betrayal says you've blown this out of proportion, he said. She says Denise made some kind of bank mistake and now the police are treating your family like criminals. I did not answer right away. I pulled the red folder from my tote and handed it to him. He took it slowly. What is this? Everything. He opened it and started reading. The forged wire form first. Then the transaction page. Then the notes I had printed. Then I handed him my phone and hit play on the recording. He listened in complete silence. When Denise's voice filled the air with her smug explanation of how easy it had been to walk into the bank, say I was incapacitated, sign for me, and move the money where it belonged, something in Owen's face changed. Not dramatically. Just enough for me to know that whatever version of Betrayal he had been holding onto was breaking apart. When the recording ended, he looked down at the folder again. I found these last night, he said quietly. He pulled folded papers from inside his jacket and handed them to me. Overdue card notices. 2 wedding vendor invoices stamped past due. A printout of a text thread. I unfolded the last page and read. Betrayal had texted my mother the night before the transfer. Did you get it done? A minute later my mother replied. Yes. She fought me, but I handled it. Stop panicking. Then Betrayal wrote back. Thank God. Owen can't know where it came from. I felt my stomach turn. Owen rubbed both hands over his face. She knew, he said. She knew exactly what your mother did. Yes. He looked at me with that dazed, sick expression people get when truth arrives all at once. Was any of it real? I knew what he meant. The wedding, the tears, the panic, the whole performance. I answered as honestly as I could. I think the fear was real. I just don't think it was fear of losing you. I think it was fear of finally facing consequences. He let out one short breath that almost sounded like a laugh, except there was nothing amused in it. That night, Betrayal left me 3 more voicemails, each one more frantic than the last. In the second one, I could hear her sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. He packed a bag and left his ring on the counter. Are you happy now? No. Happy was not the word for what I felt. The word was finished. By noon the next day, the rest of the family had begun. My uncle Ronan called first. Then texted. Then left a voicemail so full of disappointment and wounded righteousness I almost laughed. Natalie, this has gone too far. Your mother made a bad judgment call trying to help your sister. That does not mean you send police to her home like she's some violent criminal. We are having dinner tomorrow night. You need to come, sit down with the family, and put an end to this. Naomi listened to the voicemail in my kitchen that evening and shook her head. That is not dinner. That is an ambush. I know. So don't go. I stood with my arms folded, staring at my dark phone screen. If I don't, then for the rest of their lives they'll say I was too cowardly to face them. Naomi's expression went flat. They are going to say terrible things about you no matter what you do. I know, I said again. End quote, but I'm still going. Ronan lived in a big brick house in Ballantyne with a dining room that looked permanently prepared for Thanksgiving. The next evening, every chair was full when I walked in except one. They all looked at me the same way. Some openly angry, some nervous, one or two already avoiding my eyes. Ronan stood at the head of the table, hands braced on the chair in front of him like he was about to lead a prayer meeting or an intervention. Natalie, he said, sit down. I stayed standing a moment, then took the empty seat. My Aunt Linda spoke first, soft and pained. Your mother panicked. Brielle was drowning. Denise made a terrible choice, yes, but she was trying to save her daughter. I looked at her. I am also her daughter. Silence. Ronan cleared his throat. No one is denying that. But this family handles its business inside the family. We do not drag each other into criminal court. Your mother is humiliated. Brielle's life is in pieces. There has to be mercy somewhere in you. I set my hands flat on the table. Did any of you actually ask what she did? Ronan's jaw tightened. We know enough. No, you don't. I heard how calm I sounded and was grateful for it. My mother did not borrow money from me. She forged my signature. She went into a bank and told a teller I was incapacitated. She signed paperwork in my name and sent $25,000 from my emergency fund into Brielle's account. Linda looked down. An older cousin across the table shifted in his seat but said nothing. Ronan gave me a hard stare. That does not mean you had to destroy her. If this were only a misunderstanding about family money, I said, why is everyone in this room so afraid of the police? That landed. For 2 seconds nobody said a word. Then Ronan snapped, end quote, because you are making us all look like trash, end quote. There it was. Not truth. Not harm. Reputation. I stood up. Brielle knew the money was stolen, I said. I have the messages. If any of you still want to call that a family misunderstanding, do it without me. Ronan's face darkened. If you walk out that door, Natalie, do not expect this family to be here when you come to your senses. I picked up my bag. You haven't been here for me in years. I left before anyone could answer. By the time I got to my car, I was shaking so badly I had to sit with both hands on the steering wheel for a full minute. Then I opened my contacts and started blocking people. Ronan. Linda. 2 cousins. An aunt who had not said a word all dinner but had looked at me like I was the disease. With each block, the air felt a little cleaner. The last call of the night came from a number I had not seen on my screen in months. Dad. I almost let it ring out. Instead I answered. Hello. His voice came through rough and careful at the same time. Natalie. I heard what happened. I closed my eyes. From who? Half the family, apparently. Can I see you tomorrow? We met the next evening at a steakhouse just outside South Park. My father, Russell Cross, looked older than the last time I had seen him up close. More gray at the temples, heavier around the eyes. But when he sat across from me, he did not try to start with comfort he had not earned. I should have fought harder for you, he said. The words were so direct they almost knocked the breath out of me. He looked down at his glass. In 2010, I told myself I was too exhausted to keep going. That another custody battle with your mother would burn everything to the ground. I told myself you were strong, and strong kids survive. That is what cowards tell themselves when they need to live with what they didn't do. I stared at him across the white tablecloth and did not know what to say. He nodded once, like he understood that. I'm not asking you to forgive me tonight, he said. I just need you to hear me say I know I failed you. Then he reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick manila envelope. There's something else, he said. Something your mother and Betrayal have been too greedy to think about. He slid the envelope toward me. Inside were trust documents with my grandfather Thomas Cross's name at the top. My father tapped one highlighted section with his finger. Your mother is still listed on an older amendment. Betrayal has a distribution scheduled when she hits the next age milestone. But Dad had a clause built in years ago because he never trusted Denise around money. I looked up at him. What kind of clause? His mouth tightened into something grim. A kinship fraud clause. If any beneficiary is convicted of a financial crime against another family member, they forfeit everything. Their share gets redirected to the victim. I looked back down at the paperwork, at the numbers on the page, and felt something I had not felt once since my savings hit zero. Not relief. Not vengeance. Something colder and stranger than either. For the first time in my life, it felt like the moral balance might actually tip my way. Chapter 5. The next week moved with the strange, heavy speed of a storm system. Everything was happening, and yet every phone call, every signature, every update seemed to arrive in slow motion. My father drove me to Arthur Caldwell's office on a gray Tuesday morning in uptown Charlotte. The building was old money disguised as restraint. Dark wood, muted carpet, framed black and white photographs of Charlotte from before the glass towers went up. The kind of place where people did not raise their voices because they did not have to. Arthur Caldwell was in his late 60s, silver-haired, spare, and so controlled he made everyone else in the room look unfinished. He shook my hand once, nodded at my father, and gestured for us to sit. I reviewed the documents Russell sent over, he said. His voice was deep and unhurried, the kind that made you listen because it never wasted a word. On the conference table in front of him sat copies of everything. The police report. The forged wire transfer form. A transcript of Denise's recorded confession. Internal notes from Frontier Community Credit Union. My badge logs and email timestamps from Astra. The preliminary charging documents. He adjusted his glasses and looked at me directly. Your grandfather did not trust your mother around money, he said. He never said that in sentimental language, but the legal language was unmistakable. My father let out a breath through his nose, like that was an old sentence he had heard before. Caldwell continued. There is an amendment to the family trust that was never fully cleaned up after the divorce. Denise remained listed under a prior beneficiary structure. Betrayal has a distribution scheduled at a later age threshold. More importantly, the trust contains what your grandfather called a kinship fraud clause. I read it, I said. If a beneficiary is convicted of a financial crime against another family member, they forfeit their share. Correct, he said. At this stage, with pending charges and the documentation we have, I can move to freeze any future distributions. The forfeiture itself does not execute unless there is a plea or conviction. But the freeze can happen now. I felt my spine straighten just hearing someone say it that plainly. So she can't touch it, I said. Not if I do my job today. He did not smile when he said it. He just reached for a folder on his right, opened it, and slid several flagged pages toward me. Sign here, and here. I read enough to know There's one more thing you should understand, he said. This is not fortune dropping out of the sky because life suddenly decided to be fair. This is an old legal structure finally functioning the way it was designed to function. That mattered to me more than I expected it would. I did not want magic. I wanted cause and effect. The criminal case moved faster than I would have guessed and slower than I wanted at the same time. I was told that was normal. Denise had a private defense attorney named Simon Keene, the kind of man who wore expensive suits and spoke in polished half-truths. Betrayal had her own counsel by the time the second week rolled around. Frontier Community Credit Union had its legal team scrambling to contain the damage. Detective Navarro called when he had updates, but there were long stretches where all I could do was go to work, answer messages from no one I wanted to hear from, and wait. Owen never contacted me again after that day in the park except for one brief text. "Thank you for telling me the truth." That was enough. 6 weeks after the arrest, the plea hearings were set. I wore a navy blazer and sat in the courtroom beside my father. Naomi came too. She did not say much, just squeezed my shoulder once before we went in. Denise sat at the defense table looking smaller than I had ever seen her. Not softer. Smaller. Some women spend their whole lives constructing an image of competence and superiority so carefully that once it cracks, the collapse is worse than aging. Her hair was flatter, her makeup more hurried, her posture defensive in a way I had never witnessed before. Brielle sat beside her in a cream sweater that probably used to make her look delicate and expensive. That morning it just made her look pale. Simon Keene stood when the judge entered. The formalities began. Everything sounded sterile compared to the wreckage behind it. Charges were read. Plea terms were stated. The judge asked questions in the same measured tone she likely used every day of the week. When Denise was asked how she pleaded, her voice came out almost unrecognizable. Guilty. There was no triumph in me when I heard it. Just a deep, quiet stillness. Brielle accepted a lesser plea tied to receiving and concealing stolen funds after the fact. Not the mastermind, but not innocent. Not confused. Not manipulated beyond reason. Involved. That mattered. The judge laid out the consequences with flat efficiency. Probation. Restitution obligations. Financial penalties. A permanent conviction record. It turned out losing in a courtroom did what years of family dysfunction never had. It stripped Denise of legitimacy. Within days, she lost her position in insurance operations. A felony financial conviction made her unemployable in the exact kind of compliance-based role she had spent years using as proof that she was the responsible one in the family. The license tied to her work was suspended pending revocation review. The suburban respectability she had polished like silverware all my life began to rot in public. Brielle's collapse looked different. Owen was gone. The wedding was dead. Her accounts remained flagged under review for weeks, and even after the dust settled, her credit was wrecked. The debt she had been running from was still there, only now stripped of fantasy. No bridal glow, no saved image, no sisterly bailout, no mother staging a rescue. Just statements, interest, and a reality she had never bothered to prepare for. The call from Frontier's legal counsel came on a Thursday afternoon while I was finishing a code review. "This is Mila Sanchez from Frontier Community Credit Union and quote," the woman said. And quote, "I'm calling regarding a proposed settlement of the disputed transfer amount." I leaned back in my chair. Settlement. "We are prepared to return the full $25,000 to your account immediately, pending standard release language, in light of the findings from our internal review." She chose her words carefully. I respected that. It was the language of someone trying not to say negligence while very much meaning it. "You're doing it because your bank failed," I said. A beat of silence. "We are resolving the matter promptly," she replied. I almost laughed. "Send the paperwork." The money was back in my account by the following week. 2 weeks after the pleas were entered, Arthur Caldwell called me himself. "The forfeiture has been executed," he said. "You should see the transfer clear by the end of the business day." I was home when it hit. I was standing at my kitchen counter, still in work clothes, when the notification came through. I opened the app and stared at the balance in the new account Caldwell had helped me establish at a larger national bank. $250,000. I set my phone down and cried so hard I had to sit on the floor. Not because I felt rich. Not because I had one. Because for the first time in my adult life, safety no longer felt temporary. I used part of the money for a down payment on a small townhouse on the western edge of Charlotte, in a quiet neighborhood where the streets actually went still at night. Not luxury. Not flashy. Just mine. I rebuilt my emergency fund the way I had always wanted to, with enough in it to survive bad luck without begging anyone for mercy. The rest went into conservative index funds and boring, solid choices that made my chest loosen instead of tighten. I started seeing a therapist every Thursday. The first time she called what my mother did financial abuse, I cried again. The second time, I did not. By the fifth session, I could say out loud that walking away from some families is not cruelty. It is self-preservation. I changed my number. I deleted my old social accounts. I went hiking with Naomi on weekends when we both had the energy. On Sundays, I had dinner with my father. We were not magically fixed. But we were building something honest, which turned out to matter more than pretending the past had never happened. Every once in a while, word still reached me through whatever surviving branch of the family grapevine remained. Someone called me cold. Someone said I had gone too far. Someone said Denise had been punished enough. Someone else said taking the trust money on top of everything else was ruthless. Maybe it was. Or maybe people only call a woman ruthless when she finally stops making herself easy to use. Some mornings now I stand in my new kitchen before the sun is fully up and check my accounts the same way I used to, only now my body does not seize when the screen loads. It is just a number. Just money. Just proof that no one in that old house gets to reach through the walls of my life anymore. And sometimes I think about the irony of it. My mother spent my whole life teaching me that family meant sacrifice, that love meant surrender, that being the stronger daughter meant being the one everyone was allowed to take from. In the end, the thing that destroyed her was the exact same belief. She really thought being my mother put her above consequence. If a woman can forge her daughter's name, tell a bank her daughter is incapacitated, empty out her emergency fund, and still call it family duty, then what exactly is the right price for that? You tell me. And if you stayed with me through all of this, stay for the next story too. Sometimes the ugliest family secrets tell the truth more clearly than anything else.